4.5-point favorites, as we've talked about, are the Michigan Wolverines. Why, John, what worries you as a Michigan fan / broadcaster about this game? Is it just Penix, or is there other things?
Well, there are other things, but it's mainly just their offense. Their offense is very explosive. And you look at what they can do offense. They got two receivers. Roma Dunze is their number one receiver that are 1,000-yard receivers.
Right. Polk is the other one, right?
Yes.
He's pretty good. Damn good, too.
Yeah. They've got quality tight ends. They've got a running back that's over 1,000 yards. They can hurt you in a number of different ways. And here's what worries me about Michael Penix. And what I think he has done so much better this year than he did last year is the timing, the anticipation that he throws the ball with, the trust that he's built with those receivers. He will at times throw a ball that the receiver hasn't even made his second cut. And the ball is in the air. Receiver all of a sudden makes the cut, looks back, there's the ball. And receivers got trust that Michael Penix is going to put it there. And obviously Penix has trust that the receiver is going to be where he's supposed to be when he wants to be there. And being able to adjust during the game as a defense is obviously operating as well. That's, to me, is the biggest concern.
And but the one thing he does really, really well, first of all, he gets rid of the ball quickly, number one. And number two, everybody talks about his rifle arm, which is great. He puts amazing touch on the ball.
Oh, yeah. He's got great touch and great accuracy. That's the big thing for me. Now, on the flip side, I do like the fact that we've got Will Johnson, we've got Mike Sammer still, Rod Moore, Makari Page, Keon Sabb, Quentin Johnson.
Josh Wallace played very well on Monday night.
Yeah, and so I like the matchup, but as we've seen, you can have great coverage. There were times where Marvin Harrison Jr. was covered, by Mikey Samerstill or Will Johnson, and you still can make a completion. Like a good pass and a stud receiver, that's hard to defend.
Do you think schematically that Jansen stays on Odunze more than any of the others, or they're just going to, Johnson?
If there was only one, sure. But there's more than one.
I know.
And so I think they will have a rotating cast of characters. They're gonna switch up the coverages and try and slow down that release of Michael Penix. They're also going to do a lot of what we saw against Alabama, and I've mentioned this a couple of times. Alabama at time was blocking ghosts.
Right.
Mike Barrett would line up and then all of a sudden drop. And then Michael Barrett lined up and came, and there was nobody that blocked him. Like, there were times where you had 5 offensive linemen for Alabama, and they were blocking 3 dudes, and 2 guys were coming unabated at Jalen Milroe. And so if you can confuse that offensive line like that, obviously that's the best way to go about it. But you're also, with the talent that Washington has at receiver, you're going to have to win and get home by rushing 4.
Will Michigan be able to, because they did a decent, not great, but they did a decent job of running the ball against Alabama. Will they be able to be Michigan football and just pound against Washington's defense?
Yeah, and one of the great things I think that came out of that Alabama game, and because you're not saving anything for anyone. This is the last game of the year. Win or lose, this is it. All right, you don't have to save J.J. McCarthy and worry about him getting dinged up and whether he's available next week or not. In that final fourth quarter drive, there was a big run by J.J., 16 yards right before. It was to convert, and then they got to the 4th and 2. It was before the 4th and 2. So, but that threat of J.J. being able to run, being able to extend plays. Now, what I hope they don't do, you can roll them out every once in a while, but they're the edge rushers. The pass rush is not the same for Washington as it was for Alabama. We saw a lot of rollouts by J.J. against Alabama, and rightfully so. I was hoping they were going to do that. You don't have to this time. So you could stay in the pocket. You can, you could sit there, and I think protection will be good. So, yeah, I do want him to establish the run, but I don't want it to be just a ground and pound. You've got to be able to throw and test this defense because it's not a great secondary.
248-539-9797. If you're a Michigan fan, what are you worried about the most? Besides, look, Penix is the obvious answer. Is there anything else that concerns you? Is there anything defensively? Their corners are pretty good.
Corners, their corners are good, but they're not Kool-Aid McKinstry.
No, I know, but they've had, that's almost in a weird way cornerback recently. They've had a lot of good cornerbacks come out in the last few years, have done really well. But, hopefully there'll be a lot of that. I mean, seriously.
Yes, that would be really nice.
And the other thing Michigan fans should be happy about was something that they were unhappy about Monday. There is, knock on wood, no way that Michigan special teams can be as bad as they were against Alabama.
You sure wouldn't think so?
It's impossible. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, a bad snap on an extra point. And I was on that the entire game too. Like, that came back to really haunt them in the fourth quarter, because in the fourth quarter, there's not a conversation of do you go for two, do you go for what? You kick the extra point and you win it in regulation.
Yeah.
But that obviously was painful to watch. Samaj Morgan was painful. Jake Thaw, that was as holding my breath as much as you possibly can at that moment.
And even Tommy Doman, who's had a great season, he had a lot of short punts that were very uncharacteristic of him.
They were. And for the past 3 years, they've been such a weapon.
Yes.
Whether it's flipping the field and being able to hit 50-yarders, 52-yarders. Yeah, I mean, we had a missed field goal, not just a muffed extra point. So, the key for them is don't make mistakes. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. And when points are there to be had, you've got to have those. Whether it's an extra point, it's a field goal, you've got to be able to convert those moments into points.
We all hate when they get teams, not just the Michigan, or our favorite teams, Lions as well, when you get into the red zone and you have to settle for a field goal, even if you make it. Against Washington's offense, can you afford to do that frequently?
No, I mean, the answer is no, the easy answer. But then you look and you say, well, how good is Michigan's defense? How much will they be able to limit Michael Penix? And that's going to be the biggest wild card in this equation, because you look at, hey, when they played against Arizona State, I'm talking about Washington, like they scored 15 points.
I know.
I mean, there were times this year where they didn't have that offensive explosion.
And that's a bad Arizona State team.
Yes. So they can be slowed down. Against Washington State, they only scored 24. Against Oregon State, now Oregon State was a good team this year. Yeah. They only scored 22. So they can be slowed down. If this is hey, we've got to score for score type of game, that's not going to be great for Michigan.
Right.
No, and that's the biggest concern I have, because you would have thought last year Michigan would approach the TCU game differently than they did, right? Mm-hmm. And they didn't.
Yeah.
You're not going to.
And that's what we said going into that one. If this becomes a shootout, a score for score, it's not great for Michigan.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there was a caller last night with Rieger that I heard, and he was from Seattle, but a Michigan fan. And he goes, they're a better version of TCU. If you play their game, you're in big trouble. If you try to play ball possession, I think a big thing in this is the over the top pass. I mean, Washington, big plays in the Texas game, and you got to prevent those from being touchdowns. And I think Michigan's red zone defense is going to be extremely crucial in this game.
Yeah.
Because they're going to move the ball some. The bottom line is you shouldn't lose this game when you have the number 1 ranked defense in the country and they're 90th.
Right.
I agree. And that's what it comes down to. And it's not just the explosive plays. Now, it matters whenever it happens, but it can't happen early on. Like you can't, like the Lions in Green Bay, you can't start off the game with a 72-yard pass. Right. Or 52-yard completion, right? You can't have that to start it off, especially when you came out against Alabama and on play 1, boom, Braden McGregor, sack.
Yeah.
On third down, boom, Josiah Stewart, sack.
And on the flip side, you can't come out first play, JJ interception that was obviously called back because it was stepped out of bounds.
But yes, that is not the ideal way to start offensively.
By the way, you know what I thought was interesting? I heard Nick Saban say yesterday. He says he thinks the key to the game was the fact that Michigan huddled, and they didn't huddle pretty much all season.
The tempo, they controlled the tempo of the game.
Yeah, but it's not even just the tempo, the substitution. They weren't prepared for that. They were prepared for them to, look at the sidelines 80,000 times, get the plays and all that, but they didn't do that. And he said that fooled us a lot. And it's amazing to me that something that small
can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't be surprised to see that again against Washington, because Washington's an offense that needs a rhythm. They're an offense that needs to be on the field. And even if it's a 3 or 4 explosive plays, boom, they're down the field. They need to get back on the field and continue that rhythm of, the offense and the flow of the game. If Michigan can win the time of possession, the biggest thing is going to be turnovers.
Oh,
right?
yes.
You got to
Well, it
win
always
that
is.
battle.
Yeah.
But if you can win the turnover battle and time of possession, you're going to win this game for Michigan.
Right. And hopefully, as a game itself, you won't have 8 fumbles.
Yes. I mean, I'll take 8 fumbles from Washington.
Yeah,
sure.
oh, yeah. I understand that. So will I. Yes.
As a game. I
Yes.
put it all on one side. Sure.
Yeah. All right. Our telephone
Did you
number.
see that the center, McLaughlin from
Entered the portal.
well, he entered the portal. You know who he's visiting this weekend?
No.
The Ohio State. Sorry. I don't want to get a trademark here. The TM, Ohio State.
97 won the ticket.